That's what we're all
It's
gonna
hiding
do.
all the spots back of my head a little bit.
Okay, you're live.
Madam Mayor, if you could just call us to order and do a roll call, we'll get started.
Awesome. Of course. Calling this meeting of the City of Salem Council Rules Committee for May 29th, 2026. I'm Julie Hoy, the mayor.
Deanna Glenn, Counselor, Ward 4.
Shane Matthews, Ward 3.
Thank you. So we do have some members of the public here today. You're welcome. Please be welcome to be here. It's hardly phrased, sorry. We do have a staff report. I'm getting some copies printed, so we'll have it here in a few minutes for you. But the sole topic of discussion today is the charter and where we're at with the charter. We started a process with Baker Tilly to review governance for the city. Part of that was a charter review. We did meet once at the Rules Committee to discuss potential charter amendments, and that was back in earlier this year, I believe. We tabled that discussion, and in the interim, our budget got a little tighter, and we ended up suspending work on the charter. So at this point, we don't have any future plan to amend the charter, but we've had a couple questions about potential charter amendments. And so I wanted to bring it forward to the committee for further discussion, and I'll let you know kind of where we're at with that from a staff perspective, and you can give us direction from there. We do have members of the public today that would like to give comments. So I would go ahead and welcome them to come forward.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a sign-up sheet, but I believe you were here first. If you'd like to just come up and have a seat.
I'm very prompt. I was here early.
Just if you could just introduce yourself.
I'm Lee Tracy Gaynor. Salem homeowner and former chair of Highland Neighborhood. So I'm Ward 1. Live on Maple Avenue.
Great.
Yeah.
And do you have testimony for us?
Yeah, I do. So I gave a little handout. So I'm here with Celine Coleman, who co-chairs Highland Neighborhood Association, and she can introduce herself. But we're asking the committee to include one item in the charter amendment package that you're already building. We'd like an amendment to section 17 that removes the prohibition on compensating the mayor and city councilors. So the purpose, do you want me to continue? Okay, the purpose of this, basically, I'm coming from an equity perspective on that. Most Salem residents don't actually even really know that their councilors and mayors serve without any pay. When I tell people, the most common reaction is surprise, followed by the immediate recognition that that means that only certain kinds of people can realistically serve. So people with savings, people who are retired, people with very flexible employers, it's not really a description of what most Salem residents are or who we are. So I don't know, it just doesn't feel like it's representative of our city to have that in our charter where it can't even be talked about. So this is an opportunity with a citizen request, because I know it's very difficult for someone who's on council or a mayor to say, yeah, let's open a conversation about compensation. So, well, you know.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah, and most people think, oh, they get paid and they're making all these, no. And so, and you're making very, very impactful decisions. And so, anyway, I think the idea came up in talking actually to a city person from Bend, and how they dealt with it in Bend, because it was in their charter as well. And just the first barrier really for us having, well, I like to say Salem should pretend it's a city. So we're, the capital city, and we should have, compensated mayor and council. And so the first barrier is to get it off of the charter. And then later on, a committee would be formed that would discuss what the proper compensation would be. And so, but the first barrier and the ask is to get it in front of council and get it on the ballot so that people can decide.
Celine, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'm Celine Coleman from Ward One, and I agree with everything that Lee has said. As a person that has run for city council and is currently working, I recognize a lot of the sacrifices you all make, time and like just forgoing lunch. Not that I've seen the mayor do that. And I think it's really hard. I don't think it's a 20-hour a week job. It's like 20 hours a week. Doing as much and then 40 plus every week. So I think it would be equitable and fair for other people that are interested in running or even just participating that aren't able to sacrifice as much. Like I don't have a support system, I don't have like a spouse, or I'm not retired, I'm not that old yet. And so recognizing that it's much easier for those that do have those means and flexibility to run, I think it limits the candidates that we do hear about or do file to run. So I would agree with changes to the charter. We were under the impression you guys were working on changes. So with the city attorney's report, we didn't know you guys had tabled that. So apologies if we're bringing it up.
Is anyone else, are you here to speak on this topic? Okay.
Well, I'll speak when it's appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say something directly about this. The reason why a citizen is standing here doing this again is because, you know, the optics of an elected official bringing this up is, so really the pathway is a citizen request to get this thing moving, you know, in some sort of a direction, and it should really be up to the citizens of Salem, whether we compensate. And not something that's, if you read some of my notes, I mean, it's basically that was built during a totally different time than we're in now. And so to make it equitable for people to be able to participate, I mean, Ben does $30,000 a year, and I think they just voted for to add health benefits this past year. And so that would be really meaningful for someone who's working part-time or, you know, as a teacher or any number of things. $30,000 isn't anything to sneeze at, and it really would, you know, open doors for more people to participate. So that's why we're bringing it forward instead of trying to.
Did you want to add something on this topic?
Yeah, I'd love to. So Kathleen Trucco, Ward 7, and I think it's highly unusual that the city council is not compensated. In my experience, and I have 30 years professional local government experience, agencies of this size are compensated. I mean, the only time I've ever seen councils not compensated is when you have a really, really small town. So I truly do believe council should be compensated for the level of work and the amount of time that's being committed. There is an equity issue to all of that. So I would fully support compensating council. I think it's important though that there's a staff report that lists, obviously, and I haven't seen the city attorney staff reports. I have no idea what information you all have discussed in the past. But clearly, what are other cities doing? What is the norm in Oregon? You know, all of that laid out so that everybody has an opportunity to look at that information. Because from what I understand here in Oregon, there's a massive range in terms of what compensation looks like at the county and the city levels. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you for your input.
So if I could just interject there, this is an opportunity for public comment. So if Ms. Trupp, if you had any other comments, please proceed.
Oh,
Great.
no. Other than a question, is there a regular meeting for the rules committee or is it just as needed?
Is there a way to bundle? Are you bundling? Like, could this be added to the charter amendments that are already being discussed? That was kind of our impression of bringing it forward. Like, since we're already talking about charter amendments, it would be a really low cost benefit to just add a line item to, well, I mean, it would be minimal as opposed to bringing it up on its own to be added to different charter.
If I may, I was, I'm glad you brought it up.
Oh,
Because
thanks.
when I came into
You're
this,
welcome. You know, somebody has to initiate.
yeah, and when I came into the role on council, I wasn't surprised that it wasn't paid, but I accepted that fact. And now that I'm the mayor, again, I accepted that fact. I've had it in my in my wish list to leave that behind so that the next person who follows could be compensated in this role and in the council roles. So I'm grateful that you brought it up, and it will bring it to the council meeting so that we can discuss the possibilities. I think it's obvious maybe to state that we have budgetary limitations
Correct.
and priorities to maintain. So but that's for council to discuss.
Yeah, and it's, you know, again, the only ask is to put it on the ballot for people to decide to get it off the charter, so that could be a future conversation.
Yep.
So,
I think it's wise. And just for the record, I don't have a savings, and I don't have a retirement. My husband and I work our retirement in a restaurant, and it is a true sacrifice for our entire family
it is.
to be in this role. So I don't think I've ever said that out loud in public. And it's a misconception that all people who do this are somehow made of money or set in such a way that they can sacrifice like this. But that's not me. And I am glad you brought it up, because it's also not like me to ask for things for myself. And the fact that you have will bring it to council for discussion. So thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah,
Thank you, Lee. You clearly went to a lot of work and,
and there's more information on the testimony that, you know, you guys can share that kind of tells what Ben's model was and how they set up their ordinance and who decided what got paid and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But really, this is just about getting it off of the charter so there can be a conversation.
Having been involved in the League of Cities, I will say there are many cities in Oregon that do not pay their council members.
This size?
Yeah, well, not this size. No, there are many smaller cities.
Yeah, I think.
Some cities actually get like a $20 a month stipend. And that's, you know,
Worth every penny there.
yeah. So
Every 2 cents, yeah.
there's plenty to be discussed. And again, thank you for coming, and
Yeah.
we'll
I
bring it
think
forward.
the stuff that's on in our testimony is like Bend, Medford, some of the bigger cities.
And I think you kind of, just for full transparency, I think you nailed it right on,
Meeting and yes, hand up.
Thank you.
right on the head, that there's obviously political damage if you're a counselor and bring this forward to, hey, you should pay us, right? And so every one of us, I'm sure, I would be surprised to hear that not every counselor now and probably previously has had this exact same thought, and the thought of bringing something like this, but there's obviously the issue of it will be used against you later on, right? And so, I truly do appreciate you bringing it, because it at least does open up a conversation at the council level. I don't know that we, as a rules committee, don't want to make any suggestions to council other than to have a discussion about it, but
And that's why it would be a rollout.
You hit it on the head. for
Get it
exactly
off the
why.
charter and then let people decide, and then it wouldn't even, the full proposal that I did has it rolling out as people leave
Yeah.
office. So it wouldn't benefit anybody that would be voting on it all the time, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's great.
I think that's
Okay.
that's good.
Any other testimony today? Dr. Brown, did you have a question? Or a thought?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Can I share thoughts, or is this still
Yeah, go
for
right
them?
ahead.
Well, I do want to say that thank you for bringing this forward. This is not a surprise for me. This is a conversation that I've had with Miss Celine. We were both campaigning for run for city office, because we just shook our head. We shook our heads because, speaking as a person of color, when you have folks that want to serve and yet they don't have a spouse, they're not coming from a wealthy background, this makes it a real struggle, and you exclude folks who want to run. So that's for starters. And for second, I have definitely had the kind of conversation with our city manager and also our city attorney, because this was something that I myself was willing to bring forward, regardless of the backlash I would have received. I was still prepared to bring this forward, because the previous council, they said something that I want to repeat here today. They said, and I quote, "We want to set up the next counselors for success." Well, this is a part of that. And I firmly believe that if we want to create an avenue for folks to run for city office, this has to be set up for folks who are coming behind us. No ifs and buts about it. And we have to find a way to make it work. So my kudos to the team for bringing this forward. And again, whatever it takes to get this across the finish line, I am very supportive of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Anything else in public testimony today? All right, moving on then.
We could go to item 2 on the agenda,
Yes.
just adopt the minutes.
Adopt the minutes from the last meeting.
Move to adopt the minutes from last meeting.
Second.
Motion and second by Gwen, all in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to the charter, potential topics for amendment and overview of the process.
Hey, we just got a bit of an overview there. So the charter was last amended in 2002. The charter is into the city's constitution. It establishes the form of government, the elected municipal judge, and the powers of the city. It does provide, in section 17, I believe, that the council doesn't receive compensation. There's also a lot of miscellaneous provisions in the charter, references to urban renewal bonds, transit occupancy tax, and prohibition on prohibiting a regional shopping center outside the central business district. There's a lot of different things in the charter that are a bit archaic and they could be updated. There's nothing that's a compelling change. Like there's one provision in our charter that requires voter approval of most annexations. However, state law has changed since then. State law takes preemption over the city's constitution in most respects. So even though our constitution requires most annexations to go to voter approval, because the state law prohibits it, we have to follow the state law. So in some cases, our charter might be inconsistent with state law, but because the state law preempts us, it's not an issue that we have to change, but it would be good to get those sort of things cleaned up in the charter. As I talked about a little bit to begin with, we originally were going to make some recommendations from the Rules Committee to council regarding the charter as part of the governance work. That work was suspended. But when we last discussed it, there were several topics that came up that were potential charter amendments. Those included council member compensation, the term of the mayor. The term of the mayor is a 2-year term, councilors are 4-year terms. There's been discussion in the past about whether to change the mayor's term to match what other members of council have. There was also a discussion about the municipal court and the municipal court judge. Not all municipal court judges are elected. Some are appointed by council. Ours is elected. And there's also potential changes we can make to the organization of the court. Transit occupancy tax, that's been a more recent question about a charter amendment. Not so much to raise the 9% tax, but to make our charter more consistent with recent state law that allows a broader use of transient occupancy tax. Currently, our charter restricts it to essentially travel and tourism promotion. The new state law would allow a broader use of at least some portion of what's statewide is called the transient lodging tax, and here is called TOD. So in order for us to be able to use those funds for broader purposes, even just general fund, anything that the general fund could be used for, we need to amend the charter to allow it to do that. Other topics that were raised were the voter approval of annexations and then ethical standards for decision-making, section 62 of the charter, I believe. Other sections were identified for potential clarification. The section of the charter that deals with council vacancies is just oddly worded, and it takes you a couple times to go through it, to read it, to understand when you appoint a council position when it's vacant versus when it's elected. I'd like to clean that up because that causes confusion every time it happens. There's also several sections of the charter that deal with the Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission is specific to just fire, the fire department and fire personnel. There have been multiple changes in state law that are somewhat inconsistent with our charter provisions. So again, we would apply the state law instead of the charter, but it would be good to get that cleaned up. There is a prohibition on a hotel convention center on what's described in the charter. I think it's the riverfront property. That provision was put into place when the city was looking at acquiring the former Boise property, and there was a plan afoot at one point to site a convention center on that property, and there was a ballot measure that was approved that prohibited putting a hotel convention center on that property. Sort of a moot point at this point, so that would be something you could look at removing. The next thing I want to talk about is how you would do a charter amendment. In the Oregon Constitution, there's a single subject rule. So when you bring forward a referral or a petition initiative, you can only take on one subject at a time. And so for the charter, you couldn't do a multi-subject charter amendment. You could do a whole new charter, repeal the old one and put a new one in place. But you couldn't say have a charter amendment for counselor compensation and affix to the annexation section that I mentioned earlier. Those couldn't be on the same question on a referral to the voters. You could have multiple referrals to the voters, so you could have 5 or 6 different questions for voters to answer on the charter, but those would all have to be separate questions for the voters. The staff report does talk a little bit about that House Bill 3962, which broadened the use of transient lodging tax. Again, our charter limits it to 4 purposes, which are all pretty much related to tourism promotion. If you recall, when we were talking about the minimum revenue guarantee for the airport, one of the questions was asked, well, why can't we use TOT to fund an MRG to bring an airline in? They're literally bringing tourists to the city. Why can't we use TOT for that? And you can't in Salem because there's only certain purposes you can use TOT for, and it's basically promotion. And physically flying tourists into the city isn't promoting. We could promote that airline and we could promote our airport, but we couldn't basically pay someone to bring tourists here. That's kind of the information I wanted to cover. If you wanted to talk about specific potential amendments, the other piece of this, I guess I wanted to talk about is the process. So as was talked about a little bit during public comment, you can do charter amendments in different ways. Council can raise it amongst themselves, form its own committee, bring recommendations back to council, and then refer a measure out to voters. Another way of doing it is to form a charter commission. Might be members of council and the public, or just members of the public. They would study the issues and they would recommend issues back to council that could be referred out to voters. As you might imagine, that's a pretty in-depth process. Takes a lot of public outreach. It's going to be a series of work sessions and probably public hearings. That is a pretty consistent or pretty heavy resource allocation for the city. So it's going to take some money, and it's going to take a lot of staff resources to put that together. It's not something that's in your work plan for this year. There's a potential if there's a one-off amendment that's fairly small in scope that I think we could probably incorporate it into a work plan, but that's also council's time as well. So there's going to be a considerable council commitment that would go along with that, even for a single amendment. Timing wise, if you were looking to say at the November 26th election deadline to get that referral submitted to the county elections, it's probably going to be early to mid-September to meet the deadlines to get that on the ballot. So if we were going to start a outreach campaign, we would need to have an idea of what we wanted to do probably by midsummer. It's already almost June. Council hasn't had any work sessions. We haven't formed a committee to talk about this issue specifically. So we're already kind of up against the gun to get something like this on the November ballot. It might make sense if we were going to do something to shoot for 2027.
So I want to make sure I understood that well. So you're basically saying to do all of these changes or to do a full, get rid of the old charter and put a new charter is unrealistic by the end of the year. But essentially, if there was one topic that we want to do after, there would potentially be the capacity to do one topic in this upcoming election.
Capacity wise, from the staff perspective, I would say, yeah, we could probably cover a topic, depending on what the topic is, right? But I will tell you that just to get the public outreach done and to get council's deliberations done and to get that submitted to the county by September is probably a pretty aggressive timeline. Because we're already looking at June, if we're gonna get out in the public. August isn't a good time for the public to meet. Everybody's off on vacation during that period. So it's already pretty tight. I'll talk a little bit about the council compensation piece, just because that was a point of discussion earlier. Councilor Anderson raised that, I want to say in 2017, 2018 as a motion. We have a staff report, which I can provide, and I'll make sure that's publicly available, that we provided back to council at that point that provided what the compensation was for various communities. I believe Hillsborough, because they had a different form of government at that point, had basically a full salary for their mayor and a pretty substantial salary for their council members. They've since upped that, I believe, and the councilors' roles have changed. Their form of government changed a bit, so they've increased that. Some communities pay utility bill. Your utility bill is comped if you're a councilor. Others pay for benefits like health insurance and life insurance. Others provide a stipend anywhere from, this is just from memory, but from $500 to a couple $1,000s a month. Again, and sometimes it does depend on the form of government. If there's a commission style government where they're maybe expected not just to be a part-time counselor, so to speak, it differs there. For boards of commission for the counties, those are full-time employees. They're actually 8 to 5 days a week on the clock, and then they spend additional time after that.
Do any other cities our size, I mean, I think Eugene, I think is probably our most closest, do they have a similar system to us, or are they full-time? Do they not have a similar system?
Eugene has a council manager form of government just like we do, but I believe, I don't want to misspeak, but I believe it's between $2,000 and $4,000 a month that their council receive.
The question I have, this is a more informal environment, but now that I've heard the city attorney's staff report, may I ask a question? So is there, from a state perspective, a process in terms of implementing a change in council compensation under California state law? That change can't occur until after the next general election. It sounds like that's not the case in Oregon.
Thanks for asking that question. That is the case. So it's basically an ethics rule. So councilors couldn't vote to give themselves compensation, so it would take effect. It would take effect after the new council would take office. So if you weren't up for election, you wouldn't be eligible for compensation. You'd have to wait till your election happened.
Some of these things are more complicated or kind of less easy to consider.
I think one of the issues that, sorry, Mayor, but one of the issues that is maybe more timely is the transient occupancy tax. That's, just because the new legislation, and I wouldn't call that one an easy one. I think you would get a pretty concerted concern about diverting costs.
Yeah. Annexations too.
That's always a touch point. Again, that one's more just to conform our charter with state law. It's not a problem practically to apply to the state law in that case.
Interesting. I know we were a property that was annexed without our voice back in the day. I think Mike Swain was mayor then.
Representative Clem at the time was a stalwart protector of folks getting annexed against their will, and put a lot of legislation in, including the one that's invalidated our voter provisions.
So you're looking for guidance from us, Dan, on if we want to basically bring any of these to council as a possibility? Is that what you're looking for right now?
This is more just information from my perspective. At this point, we're not planning on bringing anything forward, but I wanted to make sure that the committee was aware of the pending issues. And just because I've gotten a few questions about these issues, I wanted to make sure if, there was a strong desire by council to push forward on a charter amendment, just so you know the timing for that, and if council wants to give us direction, we can reprioritize accordingly.
Let me ask a question to backtrack. I got a little bit lost when you said you said there were two ways to go. One was for council to do the amendments and within committee, or go to public outreach, which you said was be prohibited. Could you just reiterate what?
Sorry, I was.
I didn't understand what you said. There was two different
I got you.
pathways.
I apologize. So basically, all charter amendments need to be referred to the voters. So any amendment to the charter has to be referred to the voters. Only council can, refer one. There could be a citizen petition initiative to amend the charter as well, but essentially it's got to go to the voters. And council can just adopt a resolution, go to the next meeting, adopt a resolution to refer a question to the voters. But process-wise, I think what a lot of communities do is they'll do outreach to the community, find out where the community's at and other issues that might come up. There's time to draft what the amendment might look like. Some communities might have a charter commission where they would bring these recommendations to council versus being solely a council function. Those are the options that would be available to council if they wanted to pursue it.
Okay, so you're saying in the interest of time, it could be not the latter, but the.
If the council opted not to do a charter commission, it would be a shorter process probably.
Okay. It just sounded like a lot of the things were things to catch up with statewide things or things that were antiquated and some different things that may not really warrant that big of a process. But thank you for clarifying.
That's right.
Councilor Brown, go ahead.
Thanks, Madam City Manager. So I want to follow Lee's question or concern. So if I'm hearing you correct, Ms. City Attorney, realistically, you're saying that we can't bring this forward or can't go to the voters until really like the end of next year? Is that what I heard? Is that correct?
Councilor Brown, I think we could probably have something on the ballot, I would estimate in May of 27.
May of 27. Got it. And so I also heard you say that the push would be, or a place where there's concern is basically staff, right? I think that's the biggest concern. How do we get this to staff when they already have kind of like, their duties already set for this year? What you're saying, if we add this to the staff's plate, this just creates more of a burden to them? Is that what I'm hearing?
I didn't use the word burden, but you're not wrong. I would just say we have a full plate, and if we're going to put this on our plate, there's something else we would take off. Got it. And I think one of the things we'll have to consider, and I'm not going to speak for the constituents that are there. I mean, you have 4 constituents who are in the space with us today. And so they hear and see what we're saying. And of course, those that are home are watching and seeing what we're saying. A part of me says, how do we as a council talk about this so where constituents can see that we really do mean business with the things that they have brought to us today? And so that's where I'm a little bit, I'll make sure that we keep that connection, because I don't want the folks who are in the space today think that, yeah, what you said is great, but we're not gonna really deal with it until a year from now. You see what I'm saying?
Thanks. May I interject something?
Please.
Because I was leaning toward a work session where we would
Me
have the
too.
opportunity to discuss these things publicly with the
Me
full
too.
house. So
And I know today, Madam Mayor, I'm only the alternate, so I won't be in this space when you guys meet again. But yes, I think Madam City Manager knows my thoughts when it comes to a work session. I love a good work session because it allows the community, the folks who we serve, to see us struggle. right? To see us struggle with our thinking process. They can see us struggle, how we were wrestling through it. They can see everything that, that we're going through versus it being in a separate meeting. So I love good work session, 100%.
So Councilor Brown, what I said was, it would probably go to the May of 27 election. So if you work backwards from that, council would need to adopt a resolution probably in February of 27. And to get to the point where you're ready to adopt a resolution, you're going to have public hearings. You're going to be conducting public outreach. We're going to be drafting the actual amendment. If you're going to have a commission form, there's going to be a process for that. So, frankly, that's the election date when the issue gets decided. But, there's a good 6 months at least of process and important process that goes into that. So it's when you said, we're not going to take this up for a year, may not be voted on in a year, but you'll be taking it up and quicker than you would think if council opts to proceed with that.
Yeah. Well, Mr. John, I do like that idea. I like the direction we're going because, again, I could be wrong. When we look at the changes to the charter, did the previous council make any changes to the charter at all?
The charter hasn't been amended since 2002.
Okay. And so that's why I think it works in our favor to move expeditiously forward where the community can see, oh, we do mean business. If we haven't updated something in years, then I think we owe it not only to our constituents, but we owe it to the councilors that are coming after us. At least that's where I stand.
So it sounds like people are wanting to send this to a work group. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that kind of the consensus? And does that need a motion? You seem excited about the work group opportunity. So,
Work session.
Yeah.
sorry.
So can I, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
I just wanted, Councilor Brown, thank you so much for covering for Councilor Nordyke today. Appreciate you doing that. So I do think, I think Dan already answered the question that I think any kind of a changes that we make to be completely transparent and to the community and also get the community input into these changes, I think it takes time. We need to take that time to make sure the community understands how we're moving forward with it. And so even as Dan was kind of talking about May 2027, it's still to me is an aggressive process, right? Because this is not the only thing that we are reaching out to community with, because there is other initiatives that are happening, the other work that is happening. So I think what I suggest is also to be able to, for staff to kind of timeline this a little bit to see if it is May 2027, how does that, can we reverse engineer that and see when do we start and what is the process that we have to go through. And then also a work session, having this work session sooner than later, I think is important. So we'll do that. We'll do that and bring that back to council at some point.
And I appreciate that, Madam City Manager. And again, I'm not part of staff, but I do want to say for the record, when we consider, the vision that you have laid out for us, you and the leadership team, everything from the great work we're doing with REACH, everything that we're going to be doing, with our enforcement, there's a lot of great things that are happening right now that our staff are doing. And so I don't want to rush past that because there's plenty on the plate. And so I do want to acknowledge the fact that the leadership team has done a great job in laying out basically our map for the next 24 months. And so how do we add one more thing? I realize that that's a juggle that you and your team have to kind of navigate through. So I don't want to make light of that, Madam City Manager. I do realize that we have a strategic plan, we have a vision that's laid out, and how do we get these things accomplished in the next fiscal cycle? And so I do want to just, put that on the record that your team has done a great job in helping us move things forward. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor. So one thing that I do want to add is not just the staff and the council time, but also we don't want to have create that engagement fatigue with the community either, because we are reaching out to them with different initiatives and different work that the city is doing. What I would like to do is to, take this opportunity to kind of combine some of the stuff so that we are reaching out to the community, not like 10 different times, but we have some kind of a consolidation process with that.
I love that idea. And it feels like I'm using up a lot of my airspace. So Councilor Nguyen, when you're ready for me to be quiet, I'll be quiet. So I love that idea. So how do we maximize the times we go into the community? I love that. So like I already got my thinking hat on, because when you consider what we're going to be doing, I'm gonna just say in the northeast side of town, we're doing a lot of good work there, and we're going to do a lot of great more work. So part of me says, how do we maximize those community conversations that we're already having? How do we add one more thing to it versus having to come back again a second, third, or fourth time, but just kind of put it on the plate that we're already serving?
So my question is for the city attorney. So it almost sounds to me like rather than do it one piece at a time, that we're talking about a whole rework of the, right? 'Cause didn't you say if you want to do it one at a time, it's one ballot measure per item? I mean, it almost sounds to me like we're better off to like.
What I would say is the process, the outreach process and the council consideration process can be one thing. You can
Right.
say, okay, we want to make 10 different amendments to the charter. Some are bigger than others, right? But, we would have that discussion at council, we would have that discussion with the public. Council would adopt a series of resolutions saying, we're going to refer 10 different resolutions, 10 different questions to the voters. It would all go to the same election. And there's some strategery that goes into that, and what issue you want to put in front of them. But they'd be separate issues on the ballot. So you'd have a series of ballot measures on the ballot for the voters to pick from. Portland had a substantial rework of their form of government. They also had a series of ballot measures. I think there's another jurisdiction in the metro area that did it as well. And the attorney that works for Portland that spearheaded their process used to work for me before she went up there. So I had talked to her about a year and a half ago, just trying to get some war stories from her about how the process went and how they could improve it. And of course, that hasn't been the smoothest implementation for the city of Portland, but they did get it across the finish line as far as the vote goes.
So is it done that way so that people can pick and choose the parts that they like? And
it's done that way because otherwise you have to propose an entirely new charter, and that's a bigger issue to take on. I mean, you could propose to readopt some of the same sections of the single charter amendment, but typically it's done as separate ballot measures.
some of that stuff is just so hard to read when you're going, okay, here's the charter, but now we've got 15 revisions. And so referring back and forth, it's just confusing.
Yeah.
So,
And, there's election cost goes into it as well. But, one thing you could do is say, okay, say council wants to recommend to the voters that councilors be compensated. That might be a single issue on a ballot. Just let's get this issue decided, and then we can bring others forward at different elections. We can fine tune what we think the best approach would be and talk to you about that.
sounds like a work session.
Yeah. I was talking with another mayor in the state just last night about they attempted a charter change, and they included things of one thing of major significance and two things that weren't, and it went down in flames because it got hung up on
The things
The
you didn't
one
think
thing.
that were significant.
right. Yeah, it's an art. And it's a big document.
So I heard a general consensus for a work session at some point in the near future. We can work on that. I know we've got some dates identified already for other work sessions, so I'm not sure what the timing on that would be, but we can let council know.
Good. All good?
Oh, Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Well, and I would say this, you know, since you have been in this seat, and including us, you know, the new folks, Matthews, myself, and Tigan, you know, we have done a lot of excellent work in the past year and a half. And a part of me would say, we are not, you know, we're not the genesis of this conversation when it comes to making charter revisions, nor are we the genesis when it comes to discussing compensation. Because as the city attorney alluded to, you know, I was there when Anderson brought all of this forward. And so part of me says, even by us having a work session, you know, in the near future, this does look good, you know, from your perspective as the mayor and us as city council, that we are still, you know, pushing the needle forward, right? We haven't forgotten something. And so part of me says, we're picking up something from the previous council, like 2 councils ago, and we're still trying to move it. So part of me says, I think the community would honor that. I think they would say, oh, this isn't something they just thought about yesterday. They have been putting thought into this for years. And so for us to be going further down the road, I think our constituents would appreciate the fact that, you know, this is not a new idea.
I will say, and
My
I'll
own 2 cents.
say this at the same work session, I'm sure, but not work group, work session. That I'm probably undervaluing the difficulty of getting the outreach to the community and everything else, but the idea of stretching out revisions over multiple elections, one at a time, and I understand that doing 10 at a time would also be very cumbersome and hard for a voter to also understand, but finding something that's not going to take a millennium to actually get all the revisions through would be nice. And so I mean, I understand that it's more risk also to completely do away with the current charter and just propose a whole new one that's essentially the same, but with the changes that would, whatever gets proposed. I understand there's more risk that could potentially fail. But I also love to see, like, I guess what other cities have done and being able to not have something like these small, I shouldn't say small, some of these aren't. I mean, like one of them is just making us go in line with the state law that's already there. And so to waste an election cycle and pay for a whole actual ballot measure to be on there for something that ultimately is already done. And we're just trying to clarify it in our own charter. Like there has to be a quicker and better way that other communities have figured out smarter than me.
Anything else? Devin, anything?
No, thank you.
Okay, no further business? All right, we're adjourned.
Discussion.